Hello all, welcome to our next Workplace Ninjas Netherlands live Ask Us Anything. My name is Frans Oudendorp and I'm hosting this session together with your Ronny de Jong. This is a live recording and will be available on YouTube afterwards. When it's available, we will announce it through our social channels. If you have any questions on this topic for today, feel free to ask the questions in the chat or go off mute and ask your questions. So don't hesitate and join the conversation. So this year, the live Ask Us Anything sessions will be a little bit different structured. So we will start with a short intro and one or two statements, and after which the speaker, in this case Dennis, will give a brief introduction to the topic, use case or product feature. We will hopefully give us some more technical in-depth content in our conversation. So Ronny, thanks for joining again. Today we have a very interesting topic, or not?
Yeah, thanks Frans, and thanks everyone who is joining this call, and of course most welcome Dennis. Thanks for joining us today. And indeed, the topic of today, we're going, also in the announcement, going deeper in Defender for Office, and more specific, we are covering the attack simulator, which is a great feature and part of the Defender for Office stack. And today we have Dennis Hogewoning. He's customer engineer and cybersecurity specialist at Microsoft. And he will take us today in going more details of what attack simulator is. And it's not only by a few slides or a few questions, he's actually also taking it to the next level by giving us some demos, and so you have a good understanding what you can do with the Defender for Office and particularly attack simulator. But before we continue, I'm more than happy to introduce you to Dennis. Dennis, welcome again. Please have a brief introduction yourself to the audience.
Yeah, thanks guys for inviting me. Happy to be here. I'm Dennis Hogewoning. I'm a customer engineer in Microsoft, focusing mainly on the security and compliance products. So from Microsoft, I'm doing a lot of security assessments. I am doing compliance and security workshops, hosting all kind of other sessions. And Ronny asked me if I felt like talk about attack simulation training, and yeah, I think this is one of the greatest tools we have. So how can I deny something like that? A little bit of a background: I am working with Office 365 basically since the day it began in 2011. Back then, it was usually focused around Exchange, right? Exchange was considered one of the trusted workloads to start with, moving to Office 365. At some point in 2014, I moved into a consultancy role, helping multiple other customers to Office 365. During my time in Microsoft, I basically focused only on security and compliance. So that's where I am now.
Oh, thanks for the brief introduction, Dennis. And I think with security and compliance, you have a lot of things to focus on. So before we get into more details about that topic of today, we always kicking off the conversation with a few statements with a short true or false, and have great insights on and your perspectives, of course, about this topic. And the first one I'd like to kick off is there is sufficient attention to security awareness, but not always appreciated by end users. Is that true? Is that false? Does it resonate to you? Or I see you smiling.
Yeah, because I have heard about customers basically where they were surprised by their users basically working with these kind of simulations, where they were like, why the hell do you want to phish me, right? Like they don't understand why this is a good thing for the organization, right? So yeah, I definitely see that it's not always appreciated. So I think it's always key to start small, right? There is whatever you do, pretty much always you can start small, right? Maybe target one department, or maybe don't force them immediately with doing some training, right?
Yeah.
I think you can start small and work your way up. So.
And of course, I think it's also the voice of tone, or how you are, the why, why you're doing this, and it's for the bigger picture, and also not for an individual, but all for your entire company. Yeah. So the second one is end users are mature, and when it comes to security awareness, they are be able to recognize risk or phishing. So yeah, are they, or are we? I have to say, I'm an end user as well.
Yeah, so I think social engineering in the organization, it's not a security awareness program by itself, right? It's just one part of the total solution. So I think it's also really interesting to explain users like, hey, you find this USB drive on the street. Is it a good idea to put it in your laptop? Yes or no, right? To see what's on it.
Yeah.
Or yeah, it can be like numerous things what you can cover during security awareness, because it goes much further than this. Also, like, hey, why do we need to implement multi-factor authentication, right? At some point during your security awareness training, the goal is to make users part of the solution instead of part of the problem, right? So that's why you always think about all data. So where do I need to store my data as a user, right? Why don't we support 40 different PDF readers, right? All those things add up, and you have to see the social engineering, the attack simulations. It's part of a total security awareness campaign.
What you mentioned there, I think it's an interesting one, that we as an end user are part of the solution. I think that's a strong and good, it's a good mindset and a strong mindset. And even these days, today I received an email from DHL, and I was a little bit, okay, is this real or is it? And I copied the track and trace code, and went myself, instead of clicking on the link, I went to the site themselves, and it appeared to be a valid track and trace code from Redmond, from our office. And okay, that was a little bit tricky. Okay, no, not clicking on it, but it appeared to be a safe one, so a legitimate one. So they are. Organizations invest sufficient time and resources in security awareness. Do they? Do you think they are investing enough?
I think here you see also a little bit that some organizations are further than others, especially between sectors. You see a huge difference, right? So especially like governments, like municipalities, they are really a bit behind than some other sectors. For example, in banking companies, in insurance companies. What I see in the field is that those type of companies are a bit further in this whole process, right? And it's also, I think, better accepted in the organization. I'm not sure why it is. I do see it is shifting a bit. It is evolving a bit. And yeah, that's why I really like to join these kind of sessions, right? To explain it. Yeah, okay, it has a certain impact on your users, but you can start small. You can try first, see what is the feedback from the organization, right? Do they like it? Don't they like it? Why don't they like it, right? Because in the end, it's about protecting your organization, right? You want to make sure your users feel responsible about all the things they do, and they want to help protect the organizations they work for. I think whatever I can do to help accomplish that goal, it's great.
And that's also one of the comments of our listeners. David John is also saying, security awareness. It's a great thing. It's the best practice to use it as a learning opportunity, and not to deliberately try to catch people out. That's I think it's a valid statement. It's not only to catch people, but just to learn them and how they are becoming resilient to these kind of attacks.
Yep.
Not only from phishing, but also the impact phishing can have, or to other things. And
Yeah, and there are things you can do, right? So what we implemented a few weeks ago, I think, in our product is something called positive reinforcement messages. So basically, if somebody reports a phish, then basically they get like a response back from the security team that, hey, you catch the phishing message. Thank you very much. This was part of the phishing campaign from the IT department, and you are helping us to make the organization more secure. Getting these type of feedback back from the IT department can greatly help with the adoption of these kind of technologies, right?
Yeah, you're actually rewarding your
Yes.
user behavior, and I think if you give someone a compliment as a human being, it always resonates. So I think then it will become an ambassador, even to be more positive of these kind of engagements.
Definitely.
So yeah, hey Dennis, great topic. I'm interested in what you can tell us and what you can show us. You in the preparation you mentioned, yeah, I don't want to do too much in talking and too much PowerPoint. So you're a man of your word, but also a man of interaction and demo. So. Can you show us how Attack Simulator is working and a brief walkthrough to this capability of Defender for Office?
Yes, of course. Let me share my screen because, yeah, I did promise to also put a little bit of perspective in what the product is and where it is, especially in the whole suite. I think everybody's seeing my screen, right? Let me know. Yeah, cool. So attack simulation training. So first of all, attack simulation training is part of Defender for Office, right? And if we check Defender for Office, we basically make a distinction between plan 1 and plan 2. And the difference between those plans is basically that in the plan 1 functionality, you see we are adding certain protection detection capabilities on top of the default Exchange Online protection. With the P2 functionality, you are more focusing on the investigation and response part. And that's also where we find attack simulation training. So in plan 1, safe attachments, it's really about sandboxing attachments, right? To detect zero-day malware in email, but also in SharePoint, OneDrive, and Teams. With safe links, you can add time of click protection to your email and Teams, and also within the Office suite, right? That in case somebody is clicking on a link, at that point, you want to see if it's malicious, yes or no. We are having all kind of anti-phishing protection, like domain impersonation, user impersonation, mailbox intelligence. All those things are in the plan 1 part. And in plan 2 with the automation, you see, for example, automated investigation and response, which is basically automating certain tasks from your security operations team. You get Threat Explorer, which is a security operations tool, which can greatly help investigating security incidents. Threat trackers, also great tool to provide some insights in the environment, known campaigns. And this is also where you find attack simulation training. If you have an E5 customer, then basically they have both plan 1 and plan 2 at the same time. So I think this is also an important part to understand how the product and where it is basically. So just a few slides before I head into a demo and compromise some users. Why do we want to do simulation of phishing attacks? We want basically to gain insights in the behavior of our users during a security incident, right? Everything with the goal to identify those vulnerable users before a real attack happens. I think this is this helps also a lot. I think there was a recent study being done where we basically saw that your users were 40% less susceptible to phishing attacks if you do these kind of simulations on a regular basis. So this is really serious. Yeah. And I see Andrew is asking a question. Is there a blog or recommended page to read up on that? What do you mean by that? Is that the numbers or the slides? Maybe you can put it in chat or yeah.
No, I think it's regarding the P1 and the P2 functionality, Dennis.
I can put a link in the chat, or we can basically share it afterwards, right? I'm not sure if you provide the slides and stuff like that.
Yeah, we can provide it afterwards, yes.
Cool. Then let's follow up on that. So in regard to these kind of simulations you can do the credential harvesting attacks. I think those are the most popular ones, where you basically trick users into clicking on a URL where they see for example, Office 365 login screen, right? And trick them to provide their credentials. But you can also do malware attachments, links to phishing in an attachment, a direct link to malware, drive-by URL. And I think what is really cool is that our attack simulation product is being extended in the future greatly. Soon you can also send attacks via SMS, in Teams, and even directly in the operating system, which is not even on the slide. So for the future, it's looking bright. So there are also a lot of payloads you can select. I will show you this in a demo, but basically, as of today, there are more than 200 built-in payloads you can select. Most of them are in the English language, but there are also a few Dutch ones, and you can also create your own payloads. What I think is particularly interesting is that you can basically reuse real phishing emails and use them as part of your simulation, right? Because you can just copy paste the HTML of an email, replace the URLs with not malicious URLs, and just reuse it. So let the attackers create your simulations.
Yeah, got one question, Dennis, about regarding we can send out a phishing email test to our users. With the test, if they fail or are not, but if they fail, we can address some learning program to them so they can learn on that what they have done wrong. Is it also possible to use learning content instead of a phishing campaign?
So you mean without doing the actual simulation? Yeah, I think as of today, that would not be possible. I have heard that asked before, to be honest. But yeah, so right now you need to perform the simulation first, and then you can do the training. But you do have some options in what kind of training you want to provide to the user, right? So we have, for example, general ones around phishing, which are, I think, 7 minutes top of mind. But we also have more deep dive trainings like web phishing, which are smaller, around 3 minutes. But you can choose to only provide the 3 minutes or the 7 minutes, or even both of them or multiple of them. So you have a bit of freedom in what kind of training you want to put once a user is compromised.
Yeah, and that learning content is that coming from Microsoft, or is there another vendor who put in that learning content?
Yeah, so we partnered with Terra Nova Security. They are a party basically creating this training. And basically, if you want to assign training to users as part of attack simulation, you can choose from their library, not your own library. However, in some recent capabilities we added, it is also possible to basically guide users to a custom URL once they get compromised. So that might be any URL of your own, right? So we do see more of those functionalities being added and maybe even extended in the future. Because I think it would be great to provide training without doing the simulation first. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So what I'm about to show you is also that in attack simulation training, there are different tabs, what you see on top. So on the general overview tab, you see the recent simulations you did for the organizations. You also see how many percentage of your users never experienced any simulation. You have some visibility into the completion of the training. And repeat offenders, of course, people who are compromised multiple times might need some extra attention, right? So there is a repeat offender report ready for you to look into. And you can also see the behavior impact. So you really get feedback about what is happening in the simulations you did, right? How many users are less susceptible to phishing compared to when you started? So this is all great information. And also in any simulation you run, you see some information about the simulation itself, right? So you see how many users did I target with my simulation. In this case, 43. I can also see what payload I used. And what is really cool is that you can get like a breakdown of how many emails are delivered versus how many links are clicked and how many of the people next to clicking on the link also provided the credentials. And I'm not sure if you know, but within Microsoft product, we also have the report phishing button. And this is great feature to implement in the whole attack simulation program, because if you would send out a phishing simulation to all of your users and your users are reporting the simulation as phishing, then you can see that as well. So you see how many users reported your simulation as a phishing. And on top of that, you can send out the positive reinforcement emails. I think I can show them as well because I have one right here. So you get these type of emails. Let me zoom in. So you can see like, hey, Dennis, thank you for reporting a fish. Congratulations on successfully spotting and reporting. It was part of an internal anti-phishing education campaign. And they also provide some numbers to your end users, right? So, hey, more than 90% of all cyber attacks start with a phishing email. So if you report it, this is the right action to help us protect our company. So this is exactly what we talked about, right? This is basically awarding your users with some information that they did the right thing.
Yeah.
Instead of just compromising them and gather all the data and use it to basically give them a smash like, hey, this is bad.
You're reinforcing your message in their way of being reporting it. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, this is really cool stuff. And I think this is really like added a few weeks ago even. This is not really around here for a long time already. So I think that was it for the slides. Let me take you all to the portal and zoom in a little bit because I know. So attack simulation training, we sometimes refer to it as attack simulator V2, version 2. We had a version 1 in the old security and compliance portal where you didn't have like integrated training and simulation automation and all those advanced stuff what we can do now. But this new tool is part of the new Microsoft 365 Defender portal, which you find here on security.microsoft.com. And you need to be a global admin, a security admin, or you need to be an attack simulation admin. So we have specific roles which you can give to admins to be able to manage just this part of the security portal. So if we see attack simulation training, it's a button on the left in the menu. And this is basically what I showed you earlier, right? So the information about all the simulations which are out there. What you see here is some settings around repeat offender. So when are you a repeat offender? Is it around 2 compromises, maybe more? If you ask me, a repeat offender is someone who is compromised 2 times. not 3, 4, 10 times, but okay, you have some options around it. What is cool is that you can create your payloads here, and we have specific roles for that as well. So you can be a payload admin, and basically you are the one creating the payloads, which an admin can use later to use for a simulation. So everything can be created before the simulation itself. What you also see is we can do simulation automations, but maybe it's cool to talk about that once I showed you how to do a simulation. So let's start up with launching a simulation. And here you see immediately, right? It's just using a wizard to guide me for the setup of a simulation. And I can choose between a credential harvest attack. This is the one I mostly use, right? This is the one companies mostly use in the beginning to get familiar with the product. And maybe what is also really good to mention is that if you are not a E5 user or you don't have the Defender for Office Plan 2 license available, there is a slimmed down version of the product which you can use if you just have E3 licenses. So before you buy all those more expensive licenses, you can start small with credential harvest and some payloads to be used for your E3 mailboxes, and just get familiar with the tool before you do the purchase. Here you can also find the other ones, but for this, let's start with the credential harvest. So you can put your simulation a name. What I think is great, especially if you want to do these kind of simulations ongoing, right? Which is important. You don't want to do this as a one-off, but you want to repeat. You can do, for example, based on year, and then it's Q1 or Q2, Q3, 4, or maybe part on department. But I think it's good to have a sort of a naming around the simulations itself. Or you know what? Now we are on it.
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Dennis.
No.
Now the naming convention will help you to keep track on it and to be able to manage it in an coordinated way, so you can plan your campaigns, for example, or what you mentioned there. Yeah. And once you select the payload here, you can see, for example, the name of the payload, the language of the payload. I have scrolled through it. There are a few Dutch ones built in, so you don't need to recreate a Dutch one if you want to target just Dutch users. You can see also the predicted compromise rate. I think that's awesome. So based on historical data, we can basically expect what will be the compromise rate of the attack, which is quite nice. And you can see... You choosing the highest one, or? You can do that if you want high compromise, but this is exactly one of those things that if you want to guide your users, maybe start with one like 19%, right? Because it would mean that more users are basically seeing this as a phishing attempt. They might report it, get the positive feedback, and it might, trigger something that, okay, I'm looking forward to the next one. So yeah, I think it is really awesome to start with a smaller number, and next time you go a little bit up, right? And at some point, right, if your users are familiar with it, you might create your own payloads with company logos, no text errors, like really good emails. And then, of course, the compromise rate will be probably higher. I used this one before. I think who was mentioning you were Ronny. Yeah. So why not use the HL in our simulation, right? Because there is one built in, and that's why also maybe people are like, hey, DHL, this might be like a simulation, or this might be real. But I know I would be, because I know the payloads we have. And if I see something with DHL, I am first going to check the URL where it's going.
this is what I talked about before, right? So it is not necessarily true that you need to target everyone in the organization. You can start with one user, you can start with one department, and work your way up. If you choose all users, it will exclude guest users from your environment.
That's a good one.
And this is the training part. So once someone is compromised, what do you want to do, right? We have a training experience, but like I said, you can also choose to do no training, to just gather the data, or you can redirect users to a custom URL. So if you really have your own training at some URL, or maybe an intranet page with information, you can use that as well as part of the simulations. But I think I have done, you need to practice what you preach, right? I think that's the saying. So I compromised myself, I followed the training, and it's actually not that bad. I think it's quite nice to just use the ones we have as a start. And you can also assign a due date. If you want to select your own courses, this is where you browse basically the Terra Nova library. So as part of this phishing simulation, I can choose to have phishing and web phishing, for example. You also have spear phishing, and you can even make a distinction. I want users to follow the default one if they just click the link, but if they also provide their credentials, I also want them to get this training. So you can really make a distinction between just clicking on the URL or clicking and providing the credentials.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. I will just put for now assign training for me. In regard to the landing page, so this is really about what happens if somebody is compromised, right? There is a default landing page. You can create your own landing page or a custom URL, but even if you choose the default one, there are some built-in templates you can use. You can also use a built-in template and just put your own logo on it. And there is also something with payload indicators. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. So the landing page might look like this, right? You see your own name. You were just phished by your security team. And it's immediately stating it's okay, no need to feel bad or whatever. We are just helping you. But then also you see, for example, these kind of indicators. So immediately your user gets feedback in how he could have recognized his phishing email, right? It might be because it's a bad email address. It's not really targeting the user, but it's rather using a user name instead of a real username. So there are some things you can do in regard to the landing page once someone is compromised. What you also see is end user notifications. So this is really what I talked about in regard to the positive reinforcement, right? So I could say I want to inform my user in Dutch even or English. And here I can really see the default positive reinforcement email. And I can choose the languages which are available. And you can see here, Dutch is one of the available ones, which means that if somebody is reporting a phish with our built-in tool, these type of positive reinforcement emails will be fully in Dutch. Yeah, the default language. Yeah, you need to make because the positive reinforcement email, right? You can choose to do not deliver at all. You can deliver it after the campaign ends. But to be honest, I like it during the campaign, because then if somebody is reporting a phish, he really gets feedback almost instantly. The negative part about delivering the feedback instantly is you also need to take into account, because what I've heard from customers is if they would target the entire organization with a simulation, people are talking to each other, right? So once they are sitting on the same floor, they might say, "Hey, yeah, we got a phishing email from IT, right? Don't click, don't click." Of course, during COVID, it might be not that bad, but once we go out again to office, this might be something to take into account, right? That's why I really like the idea to put some random groups, for example, gather some groups with different people of different departments and target them in different campaigns, different payloads, different campaigns. I think that would be perfect. That's how we do it in Microsoft as well. Yeah.
Dennis, question on that. That's one of the challenges that we have with Defender for Office attack simulation and when we're implementing at customers. Are there other possible challenges that we can have when realizing this sort of phishing attacks?
And how do you mean by that? Like, how do you mean?
One of the challenges is that people talking to each other and knowing there is a fake phishing attempt ongoing. Yeah. Are there other challenges when implementing the attack simulation in a customer environment?
Well, what I also heard, right, what was going wrong for some customers is they have like all kind of complex environments with firewalls and proxies and that kind of stuff, and they were blocking our phishing URLs. So users were not able to click on the link because it was blocked by their firewall. So those are also some really interesting things to take into account. But what can help you to really test this whole thing out, and let me show you that actually, is that you can, before you complete and deliver the simulation to a lot of different people, you can send a test. So you can send a test to yourself, click on the link, see what is happening, if everything is available, etc. But even apart from network devices, I think we've also seen that some browsers might block the URL as well. Of course, if you use Edge, it will not be a problem, right? Because we are aware of these type of URLs. But other browsers, other parties might not know all of our URLs, so they might block it. So these are really interesting things. And that's why you can test before targeting a lot of customers. Yes. I see Martijn also asking, is Dutch also part of the available languages in the simulation? Yes. So both the simulation itself, right? There are Dutch payloads, and it's just a few. It's just a handful at this moment in time. But you can create your own ones as well, right? Or just reuse existing phishing emails in the organization. And even the trainings are in Dutch as well. So if you target users with trainings, those are even in Dutch. So maybe the last one I didn't talk about yet was this one. So you can launch the simulation immediately, or you can schedule it and it will launch later. And with region-aware time zone delivery, this can be really interesting for global customers, right? Because if you target everyone at the same time right now, it might also be that people living on the other side of the world receive the simulation at 3 or 4 in the night, right? And that might already be an indication that something is wrong. So with region-aware time zone delivery, everybody is receiving the simulation during working hours. And then basically you submit it, and that's it. So I think with the wizard, it's just going through some questions. What do you want to do? And you can send it out. Let me see, because there were some questions. I think Frans, you answered already, right?
Yeah, I think most of the questions in the chat we have already covered.
Okay. Maybe one other question. How mature is attack simulation in comparison with other products like KnowBe4 as a leader in security awareness? We have GoFence, we have other vendors that are delivering these sort of security awareness training. How mature is the Defender for Office in conjunction with that others? Well, I would say I don't know the other ones, to be honest. I do think that this product right now, as of today, is really mature. It's definitely not the same as what we had in the version 1, right? So the
Yeah.
capabilities we provided first in the security compliance portal were really limited compared to what we have today. And especially what I think is interesting if you use the Microsoft part is that it is deeply integrated with the report phishing button. It's doing all kind of automation depending on the license you have with automated investigation and response. It's giving you also within the simulation input in your secure score. So what can you do to further improve your security posture? So right now, I think this is really mature, but yeah, I am absolutely sure that there are other parties around there who can offer like similar experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the steps that Microsoft has done with the version 2 of the attack simulation are going much forward onto the right side. There are a few things that can be added, but there are always things to learn. And I hopefully, yeah, in the next weeks, months, years, there will new content available. So I think the way that we're going is the right one.
Yeah, definitely. So here you can see, as one of my users, I got the email 1 minute ago. So it's saying like, hey, you have a DHL package waiting. Click here to confirm your shipping address. So let's click it. And this is already indication 1 to customers, right? That the URL doesn't match up. But okay, the user is seeing a login screen. And basically, whatever you put as a password, it doesn't matter. We basically clear it before you click sign in. So there are no passwords being stored. This is really important because we got the question from multiple customers. I just put like some random things, and you will see it. Once I click sign in, there will be like, it will be like defaulted. So that's it. We don't store the password. And this is basically what you see. So you are just phished by your security team. I get some indicators, how I would recognize this as a phishing. I can see DHL, the sender display name and email address. They don't match up, right? Because it's a Gmail address and it's stating DHL. So this is also known as display name spoofing. I can see it's not really targeting my real name, but it's notifying me as a user. And also what you think is it's some wrong spelling and grammatic. And it wants to have some sensitive information for me. And what you also see really below in the email is that, hey, we've assigned some training to learn how to avoid this in the future. You can already see that in these default templates, it's really below the email. So it's hard to miss for a user to see this training part, but they do get an email. So you can immediately see here, hey, we have a course ready for you. As a user, you will be redirected to the security portal and you need to follow the training. And then it will be marked as completed and the admin can see it as well. Now, maybe the last thing, and then I will stop, right? Because I can easily talk like for 4 hours straight. I told Ronny gave me some time in this meeting and I was like, Ronny, this is not going to work. I can spend 4 hours talking about this subject, but maybe the last thing I want to mention before we move on, right? Is that you can also do simulation automations. So what you can do is use random payloads, target random people in your organization so that basically your IT department don't even know who is being targeted at what time. And this is really cool stuff.
And that's also preventing from employees, what you say by the coffee corner, say there is a phishing campaign going on, and that will also contribute to the effectiveness of your phishing campaign, I think. Yeah, it seems to me like it's straightforward, Dennis. It's quite
I think
easy to, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is really easy to use, and the struggles are not in the technical part of the story, right? It's really about getting your users with it. Think really about the positive reinforcement. Don't put them immediately, like give them 2 hours of training. Start small, one department, get their feedback, and move on, right?
Yeah, we have the same experience with other controls, like you mentioned in the start of the session, security controls. It's not only limited to email phishing campaigns, but also how you're gonna start using strong authentication by multi-factor authentication. It's always involving the end users. And what you mentioned, your end users are part of the solution. So the better you're informing them or taking with them in their journey, the more successful you will be. That's at least I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Hey Dennis, this was a great one. Also from a timing perspective, we have to wrap up, and perhaps we can do an extended version later on. I really appreciated your time and your explanation about attack simulator training. And for all the listeners and people today, thank you for listening. And again, special thanks to you, Dennis. And looking forward to the next one. And I would say, before handing over to Frans and wrap it up, in the meantime, be cautious on what's coming to your inbox, I would say. Frans, over to you.
Yeah, in 2 weeks, Rafael Kulner will join us in a webinar on the community Microsoft Compliance Hero walkthrough. I'm really looking forward to that one. Our next live Ask Us Anything will be on March the 8th. So next month, in about 3 or 4 weeks. For now, I say thank you all and see you next month in a new version of Live Ask Us Anything. Until then, bye-bye.